Two detectives in a police station are interrogating a man named Vincent. They suspect that he has something to do with a murder they are investigating and tell him to recall what happened this morning. A flashback shows a man named Luke walking towards a building in downtown New York City with bags of groceries. He enters a loft and immediately drops his groceries when he sees a young woman lying lifeless on the bed. One of her wrists is cut while the other is cuffed to the bed. During the interrogation, Vincent says he was home alone that morning because his wife and kids were skiing out of town, and Luke called him to come to the loft at 9 a.m. So, Vincent heads to the loft and is also shocked to see the body. He and Luke ponder how it happened because the door and windows are locked, and somehow the home alarm has been shut down. They believe that the killer had used one of the 5 keys to the loft to get in, so Luke contacts their 3 friends who own the remaining keys. In the present, Luke is also interrogated as he claims not to be aware of the loft. The detectives mention their knowledge of the 5 friends sharing the loft to cheat on their wives, but Luke denies it. He then states his alibi of eating breakfast with his friend Chris this morning. Earlier, Chris knocks on the loft's door and is horrified by the situation at hand. He indicates his suspicion of their friend, Philip, who hasn't been picking up Luke's call. Suddenly, their other friend, Marty, comes into the loft and is also surprised. The 4 men are arguing, trying to figure out who murdered the woman. Chris decides to turn the body around and see if any of them recognize her, but none of them seems to. Then, Vincent suggests that they try and solve this problem together as friends instead of blaming each other. A year before the incident, Chris and his wife, Allison, went to a party celebrating the opening of the loft's building. The architect who designed it was Vincent, who greeted the couple with his wife. Marty and Luke also came to the party, talking about the beautiful girls there when their wives, Mimi and Elle, approached them. Meanwhile, Chris, who was alone, was approached by a beautiful woman who introduced herself as Anne. Chris is a psychologist, and Anne turned out to be one of his patient's sisters, who unfortunately had sent herself to heaven. Chris tried to apologize, but Anne said it was not his fault. Afterwards, Chris and Vincent greeted Philip, who is also Chris's half-brother. Vincent told them to get Luke and Marty as he had a surprise to show them. He took his friends to the then unfinished loft, proposing they split it 5 ways so they could use it to cheat with other women. Back to the morning of the incident, Luke is panicking because they still couldn't contact Philip. Meanwhile, Marty finds a knife and a Latin phrase above the bed, written in blood. There is also a suicide note with "See you in another life" written on it. Later in the interrogation room, Chris is asked to translate the Latin phrase, as he can speak Latin. Chris translates the phrase to "Fate will unite us" but says that it used the wrong tense, so it couldn't be him who wrote it. A few months back, Philip married his wife, Vicky, the daughter of a successful construction company owner named Hiram. His 4 friends attended the wedding, and Vincent gave Philip the key to the loft as his wedding gift. He also offered the keys to the other guys while their wives were chatting in the distance. Vincent warned that by accepting the keys, they agree to the rules of the loft. They must inform the others if they want to use it, and they mustn't give their key away to anyone. The men all accepted the keys except for Chris, who was adamant that he won't be needing it. Then, Marty and Vincent made comments about the beautiful girl in the crowd. She turns out to be Zoe, Philip's younger sister, who he warned his friends not to mess with. Later, Chris met again with Anne, who attended the wedding as City Councilman Kotkin's personal assistant, who is also Hiram's best friend. She flirted with Chris and invited him to talk somewhere private, causing him to ask for his key to the loft from Vincent. Back to the crime scene, Philip eventually arrives and is immediately accused by the others of murdering the woman. He denies it because he has a solid alibi of being with Hiram the whole morning, so they're back to square one on figuring out who did it. Vincent suggests that someone else might have used one of their keys, so everyone shows their keys except for Chris. He says he still has the key but didn't bring it. Sometime in the past, Chris invited his friends and their wives to a dinner party at his house, though Allison didn't seem to enjoy it. The gang talked about Barbara's boss, who was caught cheating, and Marty started to drunkenly blab about how having a loft would be the best way to not get caught. The other men were wary that he'd expose their secret, so Luke kicked Marty's chair to make him stop talking. However, the wives looked at each other in suspicion, including Elle, who asked if Luke was having an affair as he helped her inject insulin in the bathroom. Of course, Luke denied it. One day, Chris was making love to Anne in the loft when he told her that he loved her. He wanted to leave his wife for Anne, but she didn't want him to do it. Anne told him that she was actually a prostitute, but she won't charge him for their relationship that had been going on for a few months. She left the loft after saying that he didn't know half of the story. However, Chris kept trying to contact her, even getting caught by Allison when he tried to call in one night. She told him that she knew he was up to something fishy. Another day, Chris followed Anne into a boutique, where he begged her to continue their relationship. Anne refused, believing that she wasn't the only woman Chris was having an affair with. He gives Anne his loft key to prove her wrong, stating that she gets to decide when to use it since he only goes to the loft to meet her. In the present, the detectives are questioning Marty about his declining relationship with Mimi. They're currently separated because Mimi discovered his affair with a woman he met on a business trip in San Diego. He was there with Luke and Vincent, drinking together at a bar and joined by a woman named Dana. Suddenly, Vincent spotted Hiram and Kakan entering the bar with their mistresses. Hiram, who noticed Vincent seeing him, approached the group and bought them some drinks. He subtly tries to bribe Vincent to keep his mouth shut by promising his involvement in a big construction project, which Vincent accepts. Afterwards, the group was joined by Dana's friend, Sarah, who caught Vincent's interest. They all went to the rooftop pool, and while Dana and Marty were both drunk, Vincent and Sarah skinny dipped in the pool. They ended up making love in the pool as Luke watched. When Luke tried to fetch Marty, he found his friend also making love with Dana in one of the rooms. Marty visited the loft a few months later when Vincent was using it. Marty was very sad and cried to Vincent, saying that Dana had come to his house and told Mimi about their affair. Mimi had left him, so Vincent agreed to talk to her and convince her that Dana was lying. Then, the night before the murder, Vincent was using the loft with Sarah, who he had been having an affair with for months. He wanted to end their relationship, causing Sarah to cry and reveal that she was so in love with him. The next morning, the loft's intercom suddenly rings. It's a realtor who wants to see the loft as someone has put it on sale under the name Sarah. After their friends handled the situation in a panic, Vincent finally reveals that the dead woman is Sarah. He says that he went to the loft with her last night, that they broke up, but she was alive when he left. The others are shocked, and Chris throws a glass at the wall. After they calm down, Chris hands a drink to Vincent, but Philip threatens Vincent to confess to the crime by pointing the knife at him. The others calm Philip down, but the knife ends up in Vincent's bare hands. Instead, he and Chris accuse Philip because they had found him high on cocaine in the loft with a prostitute cuffed to the bed a few days ago. Chris was angry at his half-brother and managed to calm the woman enough to leave and not call the cops. After hearing this story, Luke tells them that he had put a security camera in the loft to record his friends' encounters. They're surprised to view the tapes, saying that Luke is a pervert, though he counters that he never used the loft to have an affair. He says that he didn't record Vincent and Sarah last night because Vincent didn't notify them that he was using the loft. Due to the tapes, Vincent is worried that one of their wives was trying to set them up because she found out about the affairs. The night before, Hiram was holding a fundraiser which was attended by the men and their wives. The wives either have known or suspected their husbands' affairs. There, Vincent saw Hiram and Kakan with their wives and decided to approach them, mentioning the promised project. He threatened to spill Hiram's secret, making Kakan use Ann to lure Chris into the bathroom. There, Kakan warns Chris to keep Vincent in his place and tells him that Ann was initially paid by someone to seduce him at Philip's wedding. Then, Philip is angry at Vicky for inviting Zoe to the party. He forcefully tried to make Zoe leave, but she didn't want to, causing another guest to defend her. Philip headbutted the guy and caused a scene, so Hiram kicked him out of the party. Upset, Zoe hugged Vincent for comfort. Sarah saw this, and Vincent explained that Zoe was only his friend's sister. He invited her to talk at the loft, but she wanted to end Vincent's marriage. Sarah marched toward Barbara but was stopped by Luke, who said that she'd regret her actions, making her leave the party. The next morning, Vincent feels dizzy and drops to the floor. His friends had drugged his drink earlier, as they were the ones who planned to frame Vincent for the incident. Before he called Vincent, Luke had come to the loft to find Sarah dead from an overdose. He then contacted the others to come and showed them the security footage of Vincent making love with Zoe, Mimi, and Ann. Chris realized that Vincent had paid Ann to seduce him so Chris would also share the loft, and the other guys were just as angry to know that Vincent had betrayed them. Luke manages to convince his friends to stage the crime scene to frame Vincent so that his misdeeds are revealed. Once Vincent admits to being with Sarah the previous night, Chris breaks a glass as a signal to go with the plan. They had 2 hours to prepare their alibis while Philip stayed behind to set the stage while getting high. As Vincent loses consciousness, they strip him and cuff him to Sarah on the bed. In the present, Vincent has told the detectives about his friends framing him. They don't believe him as they didn't find any evidence supporting his story, as the men had cleaned up their traces from the loft. They made sure Vincent's fingerprints were on the knife and had their alibis secured. Their interrogations also go smoothly, but before they release Chris, the female detective wants to talk to him. She thinks that Vincent is accusing his best friends because he's hiding Sarah's murder. Chris is confused, as the police said her death was a suicide, but the detectives found that Sarah didn't die from overdosing. Her autopsy shows that she died when her wrist was cut, and she didn't leave a suicide note. Knowing that he had left her note in his jacket, Chris invites Luke to the loft that night. He confronts Luke for being the one who listed the loft for sale so he could steal the note and throw it out. Chris figured out that the note was actually written by Luke because he had been in love with Sarah all this time. However, Vincent was always in his way, and Sarah told him that she had no feelings for him after the fundraiser. So, Luke visited Sarah after her breakup last night, when he drugged her and injected her with a lethal dose of insulin. Chris tells Luke that Sarah had only died when Philip cut her this morning, and now Vincent is being investigated for murder. Luke doesn't seem to mind, instead threatening Chris with a knife so he would jump off the balcony. However, Chris had already told the police everything, and now they were coming to the loft. Knowing that he's doomed, Luke decides to fall off the balcony to his death. A few months later, Mimi has reconciled with Marty, and they're hanging out with Chris, who is divorced now. When Chris leaves for the parking lot, he is met with Anne, who wants to return his key. He tells her that Philip is awaiting his trial and Vincent is now divorced and lives alone in the loft. The movie ends with the two planning to go out on a date to hopefully restart their relationship. We should not hide secrets from the people we care about, nor should we take advantage of their trust and kindness. Because ultimately, the ones who can hurt us most are the ones closest to us. What would you do if you encountered the same situation? Write your comment down below. Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like and comment to help the channel. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.